Hey guys, welcome back to First and 10 over here on Clueless Gamers. Of course, I'm your host, Pete, joined in a second, as always, by my co-host, Brian. Guys, we're back. We apologize last week for missing. That was the first week of the year we missed, and we had a good reason. Brian was sick. He'll talk to you in a second. He is doing a lot better, so wish him some well wishes there in the chat, but he is back. Feeling almost 100%. He's kind of maybe in the 85 range, but we got him off the IR. So we're back this week to talk some NFL football. Of course, we're into week 8. We'll touch on a little bit of week 6, more focus on week 7, and then we'll, of course, give our picks at the end here. We already had a Thursday night game. We're recording this on Friday. Rams-Vikings. We'll get to that game as well. You bet we will. And there's a lot to talk about in a jam-packed show we're going to have, Bri, as long as your voice holds up. So with that being said, Bri, I turn it over to you, man. How are you feeling? Welcome back, and I'm excited to be back in the chair with you again, man.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, doing better. I had a pretty bad cold there for like a week or so. The cough felt like, I mean, everybody I talked to at work was dealing with something. So
It's going
bugs were
around.
going around. Yeah, the temperature rising to like nearly 80 degrees in October was probably in part
I'll
to
do it.
blame for it, but luckily feeling better and happy to
Good.
be back talking some football.
Yeah, I'm glad you're back as well. I've missed doing this with you, and man, kind of a snooze fest last week. A lot of games that were not that great. The week before had some interesting results in week 6, but there's a lot of storylines. The injuries, especially to the Tampa Bay Bucks, have been really, really rough, and maybe one of our teams on the trend up, and one of our teams, one of our favorite teams, really on the trend down. So there's a lot to get to,
I
Bry.
wonder who that might be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's my not so subtle tease there, Bry. But let's stay in order. Let's jump back to week 7. As I said, kind of a little bit of a snooze fest. I mean, just to give a refresher, this was Broncos Saints on Thursday Night Football. This was the blowout of the Jags and the Patriots in London. The Seahawks Falcons game that wasn't close. Like, there was a lot of Bills Titans, a lot of snooze fest games that went on during that week. But there's one game that I thought was very, very good, probably the best game of the week, down to the wire. We head over to Minneapolis. We go over to Minnesota, and the Lions defeat the Minnesota Vikings 31-29. At the time, hand the Vikings their first loss of the season in a game where both quarterbacks played pretty damn well. One quarterback in Jared Goff, you could clearly see played better than Sam Darnold, but Sam Darnold was really solid in this game, and this game came down to some execution and the Lions just being more physical, proving that they were the more explosive team. And you have to say, this NFC North right now not only is the best division in football by far, clearly, but it's going to be a bloodbath, Bry. And at the end of this, you look up, one of these teams, if not two of these teams, are going to be end up missing the playoffs with probably a winning record. It's going to be one of those seasons here in the NFC. I've really enjoyed watching this division. What do you think of this titanic battle that kicked off last week?
Yeah, I mean this was one of the games that you definitely had your eye on going in. That there were a few matchups that you looked at on paper and was like, "Oh, this could set up for a pretty good week." You know, you had the Chiefs and 49ers, you had Green Bay and Houston was an interesting game. Lions Vikings, like you said, Minnesota comes in unbeaten, and I mean for Detroit to win that game, showed me a lot, and I think showed, when you look at the power rankings with some of the experts that actually put the Lions in the top spot over the defeated
You can
Chiefs,
make that
and I
argument.
definitely think they have a case, with how well they're playing. Remember the previous week they just bludgeoned the Cowboys. I mean, silly me picked the Cowboys to win that game. Boy, was that a disaster. And the Lions just that was just an annihilation. And then you come back and in a road divisional game, and they were down early, so they kind of took a punch early. For them to win that game, I think that showed the kind of strength this team has. And you look at the way Goff is playing. I mean, he's had some games here with perfect passer ratings
Incredible
lately.
stuff.
He's in the MVP conversation himself. I don't think he's top of the list. I think right now you got to say Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
The way Goff is playing has been outstanding. They got the two good running backs. Any one of these receivers can beat you on a given day. So they just got a lot of weapons. They're very physical. and even losing their best defensive player in Aiden Hutchinson, that was a blow
Yeah.
in that Cowboys game. But this team just they had the depth to make up for a big loss like that, and this team is a force to be reckoned with. I don't think there's any doubt.
I 100% agree. I did wonder what it was going to be like going against the Vikings, going against Brian Flores. They were well rested, and then you're losing Hutchinson, as you referenced, which the last time we recorded, that game against the Cowboys had not happened. He suffers that horrific, gruesome injury to his leg. I felt so bad for him. I mean, Fox wouldn't even show what ended up happening, which was the right decision. Of course, if you went on Twitter, you've seen it everywhere there. We know he is recovering. He had surgery immediately, and his season has been concluded. Hopefully he can end up next season being the player that he was. He was having a hell of a season, and you wondered how the team was going to rally around that. We don't know what the long-term repercussions are going to be losing a player of that caliber on that defense, but for this one, standing up, coming out, playing against a hard-nosed division opponent, and playing so well, that shows a lot of heart to me, and it's not even shocking because that is really what Dan Campbell has solidified this city and this team as since he has gotten there. All his antics, and maybe he's a little of an oddball, doesn't matter. He's clearly resonating with the players, with the city, and they run through a wall for him there. And Jared Goff is absolutely, as you bring up, in the MVP conversation. He's probably second for me behind Lamar as well, but you have to, we can't just, kind of pish posh and push this stuff aside. 18 for 18 in a game this season, 100% completion percentage, obviously. 22 for 25 in this game against Minnesota. Like, we're not looking at like, oh, hey, he threw for 300 yards on 63 attempts. Like, he is being efficient. He is throwing for a lot per throw, the yards that he is gaining per throw. This offense is dangerous. It's explosive. And you have to watch for what this team could do because they can kind of play any type of way, right? They can play slow and grind you with the run game in Gibbs and Montgomery. They can play fast. Now, Williams, we'll talk about him in a second, suspended for the next 2 games. But to have him one of the fastest guys in football, you know what St. Brown brings to the team. You have Laporta there. You have all of these little pieces that they extend the field. They can play possession football. They can hit you over the top on a go route. They can burn clock. They can do whatever you want to do. Whatever the defense is good at, they can change their offense and do what you're the worst at. And I think that's what makes this Lions team so dangerous, and it's why I picked them to be the number 1 seed this year in the NFC.
Yeah, and I think right now when you look at this conference, I mean, what team do you come up with and say they're better than the Lions right now?
No
I
one.
mean, right now this team has to be the favorite with the Niners down right now, and I know they'll get Christian McCaffrey back at some point. They're definitely going to be dangerous, but this team had a big lead last year against them, and this year, this Lions team,
Yeah.
I think you could make the case is considerably better. Now, I know they lost Hutchinson, that's a big blow, but they look even stronger and tougher this year. They proved that last year was no fluke. This team was here to stay, and the other point, like on their offense, you mentioned how they have so many different ways to beat you. The other thing that stands out is how creative they can get with Ben Johnson
Yeah,
calling
for
the
sure.
play. You could have Amon Ra throwing the ball for touchdowns, and they've already had a few trick plays that they've, executed perfectly this year. So yeah, this is a well-rounded group, really, both sides of the ball, and yeah, I mean they're tough. There's no way around
I
it.
mean, we saw it in the Lions Cowboys game, right? They're running several plays with offensive linemen split out wide. Like, that was purposeful. They wanted to take it to the Cowboys, given last year's controversy with that game, with Dan Skipper reporting eligible, not eligible, all that stuff. But we know the creativity they have. Like, that is what makes them dangerous. And I think if this defense can solidify, maybe make a move or two here at the trade deadline coming up here real quick in the first week of, I think it's November 5th, I believe, is the trade deadline, that about what, week and a half from now, give or take. I think Max Crosby has been rumored. Don't see him getting moved, but even if you get a lesser player, get a couple rotational guys in there to solidify that pass rush, I think they could be even more dangerous than they are. You don't get to peak Hutchinson, but you can make up some of that production. And on the other side, Brian, for the Vikings, just before we move on, I don't think
Mhm.
this loss, or even the one that we'll talk about later that they just lost last night and Thursday night, I don't think they're sunk. I think they've played solid football. Is there weaknesses you could see or limitations we're starting to see again with Sam Darnold? Sure. But to be honest, he's played a couple solid games these last couple of losses. They just haven't made the right plays when they needed to. That defense has bended a little bit more, and it's broken a couple times than it was in the first 5 games of the season, and they're going to have to come back to the drawing board. But this game, Justin Jefferson can't be stopped. He had 81 yards in this game on 7 catches. We know what they can offer. If they can get Aaron Jones going, they're a completely different football team. I'm not selling Viking stock. I think they are still involved in the mix, but they got to watch out here before this starts sliding backwards here going into November.
Yeah, I think they are in the mix. At the same time, I think there is reason for concern.
Okay.
They started out so hot. There's the feel good story with Darnold is all well and good, but you just wonder, is it
Yeah.
sustainable? And they've shown some warts here lately. I know we're gonna get to the game against your team coming up, but like Darnold started off so well, and they're scoring touchdowns the first couple of drives, and then the offense kind of took their foot off the gas. They didn't really
Yeah.
manufacture much in that second half, so. I just wonder if Darnold's going to be able to keep it up the way he played early on in the season. He definitely has the weapons around him. He has good coaching. There's a lot to like with this Minnesota team. I don't know that we can say they're Super Bowl contender good. I mean, I definitely think they'll make the playoffs starting, 5-0,
You would
but
think.
they have done some warts here lately.
I mean, we have seen teams, I think the Vikings even did this a few years ago, that have missed the playoffs and have collapsed when they started off with a 5-0 record, or at least 5 wins in the first 7 weeks. It has happened before. The NFC is North is tough, as I said, and somebody
Yeah.
is most likely going to miss the playoffs in that division. Will it be the Vikings? We'll have to see. Brian, the only other game really of note that we both kind of agreed on that we wanted to talk about, because there was a lot of snooze fests in week 7. Chiefs and the Niners. And you touched on it, you referenced it. A game that, it's a Super Bowl rematch, obviously. It's billed as one of those big games of the week, but we kind of knew going in that these teams weren't exactly on the same level right now. And you know what? That's funny to say, because you could argue there's a lot of similarities here, Bry. Both teams extremely injured. They are missing key offensive cogs on both sides of the ball. But at the end of the day, you know who you trust more, right? You trust Andy Reid. You trust Patrick Mahomes more than you're going to trust Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy. And Kyle Shanahan's a great coach. Brock Purdy's a really solid player. He's proven it time and time again, but they're not those guys on the other side. And the Chiefs, now Mahomes undefeated against the 49ers in his career. We know what they bring to the table. I just knew going into this game, I thought, hey, this is an easy Chiefs cover. I felt like whatever, I forget what the point spread was, but I said, whatever it is, they're going to cover it because they play well against this team. The Niners are so banged up. And in this game, they get even more hurt. They haven't had McCaffrey a single snap this season. Are the reports that maybe he's coming back? Sure, but can you believe that? Tendinitis in both Achilles? You have to go overseas to get treatments? Not a good sign there, and you really can't trust the Niners in their injury reporting, given McCaffrey at the beginning of the season. He's listed as probable. He looks like he's playing week 1. A lot of people like me are suckers, pick him in fantasy. He hasn't played a single game, so you can't trust that. Ayuk gets hurt in this game. He's out for the season now after all the controversy of him in the offseason. I'm glad for him that he got his money, because this is why you do get your money, because you never know when an injury is going to happen. But he was not having a good season. We all knew it. Debo in this game, sick, gets rushed to the hospital as the pneumonia. Looks like he's not playing this next week. Kittle's been in and out of lineup. They're banged up. Jawan Jennings didn't play here. He's been banged up. They are severely injured right now, Bry. Their offensive line is not great outside of Trent Williams. The defense has significant injuries on their side of the ball. This just looks like it might be one of those years, Bry, where the Niners, all of it, and I said it in the prediction show, I was like, hey, I'm picking them to go far, but man, I might regret this pick, because it just feels like at some point this is going to implode with their cap, with their injury history. How long can they keep this up? Is this the year they're imploding?
Yeah, I mean, I still have faith in this team
Okay.
overall. I have faith in the talent, that they have on both sides of the ball. I mean, you definitely make a compelling case. I mean, they have a lot of issues right now. There's no question. I mean, you're going into these games without so many of your top weapons, and then like Debo, they think is going to be good to go. He's like on the sideline, and he comes in for a
Yep.
couple of plays, and clearly he doesn't have it. And then, as you said, you find out he has pneumonia, so he's now a question mark. I mean, up until this game, Brock Purdy was playing good
Yeah,
football,
he was
and then
playing solid.
he really laid a clunker in this one with 3 picks, no touchdowns. Early on, like seemed like even with McCaffrey hurt, Jordan Mason was doing such a good job that it was like, yeah, they miss him, especially what he brings in the passing game. But Mason was running the ball really well, so they weren't really missing that much there. But as the weeks go on, Mason's getting a
The
little
league
more
caught up.
exposed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think so. And you miss just the dynamic ability of McCaffrey, who can, catch 10 passes, and as well as he just does so many things for that offense. Yeah, I mean, right now they're just not whole. And with the Chiefs, it's also kind of a fascinating case because like they're winning all these games. We know the defense is playing well. But they're doing it with Mahomes playing very subpar
He's
football. I
he's
mean,
he's not been good. That's just, let's be real.
he hasn't been good. The weird thing is though, it's like the thing that matters most is he's still winning games,
Yeah.
which that is number one, and he's still making the plays like that crazy run he had where he stayed in
Insane.
bounds and he juked at the defender. And it just always seems like even if the numbers aren't there in crunch time, whether it's a big throw or a big run, he just has that play in him,
Well,
even if it
he had the
hadn't
play
been
too
there.
where he ran over a Mufasa or whatever, the safety that he ended up hitting, like he truck sticked him. Like, it's crazy.
It really is. But like the numbers overall are so underwhelming, and we know part of it is like the weapons just aren't there. We know they did acquire DeAndre Hopkins, who that'll help. I mean, they badly
Yeah.
needed a weapon. He should be out there for their next game coming up this week. But I mean, you look at the stats from the game against San Francisco. Their leading receiver is Noah Gray.
I know.
And I mean, nobody else was even close. Gray had 66 yards. The next highest was P. Ryan, the backup running back, who caught 1 pass. So this passing game is not clicking. I mean, Kelsey kind of got out of the doldrums there for a while, had a couple big games, but he's not the Kelsey of the last few years.
No.
I don't think there's any doubt there. But all you can say is even with all these issues on offense, the team is winning. They're undefeated with Mahomes not playing well at all, and you figure he's gonna pick it up. He's got a better weapon now with Hopkins in the fold, and look, this team it just doesn't seem to matter as long as you have Andy Reid calling the plays and Mahomes, even if he's playing 50% of what he usually is, it's good enough to win games.
I think that's I talked about this a few weeks ago. I think that's the most frustrating thing about the Kansas City Chiefs right now is like if you're not a Chiefs fan, you're a fan of the other 31 teams. You hate this team because they have such an excellent culture. Their coach, their quarterback, Brett Veach, the GM, the drafting they did, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. It is maddening that this team is undefeated, the only undefeated team left, because it's like, how are they doing this? I think stats can sometimes be a little bit of a mirage. Like Mahomes is definitely playing better than his stats dictate. That's a true statement, right? If you watch the games, he is playing better. The flip side of it, he's still not playing that great. But there's this
Mhm.
weird thing where like when it comes down to it, when they need a play, you know he's gonna make it. Like it's this thing where you have this absolute trust in his clutch gene, all of these things, whether it's a run or a pass, like you said, he's going to make that play. And the other quarterback in the other sideline is going to get nervous. They're going to get the yips, and they're not going to do what he can do because he's done this so many times already. In believe it or not, it's his young career. He's only been in the league what like 6 years, and to do all the stuff that he has done is incredible. You have to give a shout out though to this defense though. This defense is the reason why they're undefeated. This defense is the reason why Mahomes is able to make one of those one or two winning plays at the end of games. Because they're keeping it close, because they, in my mind, by far are the best defense in football. That is why these games are like that. And that is a credit to Veach and everything of keeping this team together, re-signing Chris Jones, doing all of that stuff. But anyone out there saying that Mahomes, I don't care if they're undefeated or not, this guy's on your MVP ballot, let's just be real. I understand if they're undefeated, it might get awkward because it's like usually undefeated teams or even close to it, they're going to have the MVP. His numbers have been not like, oh, he's not been himself. They've been putrid. Like he's made the plays we needed to, but there's a lot of plays he's missed. He's missed throws. He's just not been there. And I can't fully blame him because of the cast of offensive weapons he's been playing with, the rotation that's been going on. But it's this weird thing in my brain, Brian, right? Like, he is playing better than the stats, but at the same time, he also is not playing well. And at the end of the day, like you said, it doesn't matter. They're winning.
It really is weird because, like, at the end of the day, the name of the game, you play sports to win. You don't play the
Yep.
game to put up 400 yards and four touchdowns. And he's done that plenty. He's had years where he's put up the gaudy numbers and won the MVPs, and it just seems like he doesn't care now
Does not care.
about putting up those numbers, that it's just about winning games. And it's just like when you listen to him, like in his interviews, it takes more than just talent to be a good quarterback, and he just has the total package. You just when you watch him play, he's just in total command. He has that something extra that the great ones have, and he has it a lot more than some of even the other greats. Like he's really just special in that regard.
Yeah, I think it's well said. Like there, you watch his press conferences, and even when he has these amazing games or he has these kind of subpar or very bad games, it's the same tone. It's all about the blame for him or the praise for everybody else. It's exactly what you want out of your quarterback. And I think a lot of these young quarterbacks in the league have really struggled with that. Even some of the vets that are around, like he is a vet even though he's below 30 years old. He's had so much experience, and he is that like standard of what you expect him to be. And then you get all the upside of all the amazing talent, the leadership, the involvement in the community, the great teammate. Like he's everything that you would want. And I think right now it's a privilege that even as subpar as he's playing this season, we're watching one of the best already in NFL history, and we've gotten to watch his whole career. I think that's a real privilege that we've gotten to see that.
No doubt. And I also think it's not like for the rest of his career he's going to be playing like this.
No.
He'll get back to a level where, we've seen in the past as the offense gets better around him. But like I said, for him right now, it just seems clear that he doesn't care about throwing
No.
big passing totals and touchdowns. If they're winning games, that's all that matters to him, and that's what the Chiefs are about.
And this offense, if we're being fair, it was expected to be very different this season, and I think it would have been. You would have had in there Worthy, Hollywood Brown, and Rice. It's a pretty good trio, right? And then hell, maybe if Kelsey he's getting less, guys focusing on him, maybe you even get DeAndre Hopkins still. And now you're looking at, wow, this offense, is this the best offense in football? They've had significant injuries. That doesn't even count Pacheco that's been out too. That has to be taken into account. We take it into account with every other quarterback. Mahomes can't be an exception there as well. And the other side of it, I mean, we touched on the Niners, but the final point I'll make with it, they're in dire straits, and we'll talk about them as we get to our picks here for this upcoming week here in Week 8. This is do or die here right now, Bry. This is a huge deal of what is going on, and now Brock Purdy, he's without some of these superstars. This guy wants to get paid, whether it's the end of this year or the end of next year. He's got to start stepping up. They're in a little bit of trouble. That's all I'll say is that final point. They're in a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we're in agreement there. We'll see what happens this week. They play Dallas, who we know has the issues
Their
in
own
their own right.
problems.
So I feel decently good about them bouncing back in that spot, but I mean, they got to get healthy, and you know, That's really the main thing with them.
Brian, let's jump into week 8. Of course, the current week that's going on, and we're recording, as I said, a day after the Thursday night game, which ended up being a pretty good game. The Minnesota
Yeah.
Vikings flew to the West Coast to visit my Los Angeles Rams. The Rams winning this game 30-20. And Brian, we'll start right here because this is where everybody's talking about it because it, of course, overshadows the game, and that's what happens. But the Rams, they get a win. They get a safety at the end of the game that ends the game. Controversial call, which I don't even think is that controversial. It was clearly a face mask. The ref somehow was blind and missed it. It ends the game. It should have not been a safety. Do I think the Vikings come back and win the game? No. And I'm not even saying that as a Rams fan. Like, they would have had the ball at like the 20-yard line, a minute 30 to go with no timeouts. They need a touchdown and a 2-point conversion just to tie, and then they would have had to go in overtime. It felt very unlikely. They scored, what, 2 field goals in the second half. I don't think it would have happened, but still, that's what everyone's talking about. You see the trolls, you see the Viking fans, you see everybody, a football fan, coming out of the woodwork, complaining about this call, feeling the game, oh, it went so much in the Rams' favor, which I completely disagree with. You know me, I'm harsh on this team. I would call it out if I felt like the Rams were handed a win. They were the better team. They played the better football, especially in the second half. They settled down after the first 2 Vikings drives. And at the end of the day, all we're going to do is talk about that call. All the people are going to talk about that call. I mean, I guess that's where we're starting, Brian. What do you think of the end of the game?
Well, yeah, I mean it's a horrendous call, but like I agree with you. If they do call it, there's still a lot of things that the Vikings have to do in their favor to get the score tied, and that's only getting it tied. So
Yeah.
the idea that this was the reason they lost, that's just not fair. But the call is a brutal one,
You can't
especially
miss
when
it. You can't miss that.
you see on replay how close the official is. He's standing right behind the play. Like
And,
I
and
don't
after the game,
get
he's like,
how
I
you don't
couldn't
see
see
that.
it. You couldn't. How can you not see it? You're right there.
You couldn't see it, but millions of people watching throughout the world could see it. I mean, and it's one like where they have this case where they can buzz down, from replay
Yeah.
and overturn certain calls. That should be one where like somebody upstairs is like, yeah, a blatant
Yeah, they
face
said
mask,
that type of thing wasn't reviewable. Well, it should be. It definitely should be.
definitely should be. I mean, it's really kind of mind-boggling that you miss something that
Yeah.
blatantly obvious.
And
As
Byron
far
Young
as the
too.
game,
Byron Young puts his hands on his head. He knew he did wrong, and you could tell the guys
he
on the
knew he did.
sidelines were like, like he wasn't overly excited because they knew they got away with one, and they're definitely gonna preach that this week when they get back in the film room and be like, in the future, can't be doing stuff like this. That's not gonna fly.
And you probably saw his
His
humorous
tweet,
comment, I
yeah,
think, on Twitter, yeah, where
yeah,
he was like, "Oh, it was so loud in the building,
yeah.
I just had
He
to
was being
cover my
clearly he was
ears."
being sarcastic, obviously.
Yes, but I thought that was a funny
Mm-hmm.
line from him. But yeah, I mean, it was a good job by your team. Obviously, they got their top 2 weapons back in the offense. That made a world of difference. I mean, when you're without Puka Nakua and Cooper Cup for an extended period, clearly we saw the effect that
It
had
was
on the
bad.
offense. Stafford wasn't playing well. You combine that with the issues they've had on the offensive line. It all made sense why things weren't clicking. Well, now you get healthier. I mean, Puka looks like he's really could be a legitimate
He's
superstar in this
incredible.
league. I mean, watching some of the plays, and it started when I don't know, you probably did see the first play, I think, on offense, they go to him on a little
Dropped it.
receiver screen. He drops the ball. It's like, oh, a little bit of rust his first game back. By the way, we didn't even know he was going to be back in this game.
Nope.
Like Cup, we knew was back, but Puka was like, oh yeah, he's back. How good of shape is he? Well, he showed pretty good. He goes
Yeah.
for over 100 yards. Made some superstar caliber plays. I mean, he was just outstanding. Cup, not a great game, but he scored a touchdown. He made a couple catches late.
Big catch
Know what
late.
he is in this offense. Stafford just played a tremendous
He was
game.
great.
I
It
mean,
was
he
the
had
best game of the
four
season by far.
touchdowns. This game of the year, 2 touchdowns to Demarcus Robinson too, so he had a good game. Kyron Williams continues to thrive. So when you have all your weapons out there on this offense, this is a dangerous team. I know they're not a great defense, although this Jared Verse is a bright spot. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
he's really playing well. But on offense, if they're whole, I would not count this team out. In a division that we talked about with the 49ers not playing great, Seattle's a little up and down, Arizona, you don't trust them. This team, I think, has a little bit of steam in them. I'm curious to see if you feel the same way.
Yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic because I've seen a lot of these Ram teams collapse or just kind of sink. We just saw it in 2022, but I do feel similar to you. Like it feels like if this is a previous year where the NFC and the Niners were typically as good as they were and they had a 4-game lead on the Rams, I'd be like, yeah, it's over. With the NFC North, like it's done. Like there was too big of a hole. But given how bad this division has been, how mediocre, the Rams, I'm not saying they're going to win next week against the Seahawks, but like they typically own them. They usually have their number. The Niners are down and you already beat them. Yes, the Cardinals blew you out, but they're so inconsistent. Like even winning that game against the Chargers last week, like you just don't know what they are, right? Like they just make
Yep.
no sense over there. And the next time you play them, you're going to get them in LA. I think that defense is kind of figuring it out these last couple weeks. You know, we weren't on the air last week, but like the only reason they beat the Raiders in a very ugly game last week is that defense was great. Had 4 turnovers, like they played great. And there's these guys that are just coming on, and Verse, Fisk, besides the penalty, Byron Young, you got, McCollum there kind of in the back end, an undrafted free agent. They have guys that are making plays. They got Darius Williams. You bring back Akilla Witherspoon. I like what they're trying out. Omar Spates here. With the injuries there at the linebacking core. I think there's a possibility in Chris Shula's defense that they could start coming on as the season goes on. You look at the stats. They've not been finishing plays. Sure, they have to get better at that, and they've been better the last couple of weeks. But they're a defense in the league, top in the league of pressure rate. So they are getting that pressure rate to the pass rusher, which is key to protecting probably a vulnerable secondary that they have. And then, yeah, on the offensive side of the ball, I mean, is there any team that makes this world of a difference when they get their top 2 weapons back? I mean, they look night and day. I mean, they look like they were a dread of the league in the beginning of the season without Kupp and Puka. They come back and they do look like, wow, is this like a top 4 offense? Like, are they that explosive? And you slot in, Demarcus Robinson to a 3. You could bring back Jordan Whittington when he gets healthy in there and really get him going. Tyler Higbee on the cusp is coming back as well. All of a sudden, Steve Avila comes back in the offensive line. Jonah Jackson. I don't know, Bri. It could be interesting.
And Stafford made some just outrageous plays on the touchdown to
That
Cup.
second
It looks like
touchdown.
he's going to be sacked and somehow gets out of it and throws a dart to the end zone. I mean, at 36 years
He
old,
still
he
got it.
looks like he's still got a lot left in the
Yep.
tank. He really does.
Yeah, the trade rumors I will say that happened this week before this game, the Cup one made sense, right? Like I was like, I won't be surprised if he's traded. Like he's on the north side of 30. He's expensive. He's very injury prone. I'm not shocked if like we lose this game to the Vikings, he's gone. Right? Like that made sense. The Stafford one I thought was ridiculous. I was like, here we go again.
Yeah.
Another year of a Stafford trade. I'm like, they're not trading Matt Stafford. First of all, quarterbacks of this caliber in the middle of the season, they don't get traded. Okay? And you know why they don't get traded? Because them acclimating to an entire new offense in the middle of the season, it's almost impossible. Okay? Like there's a difference between a wide receiver or a pass rusher moving. A quarterback, that doesn't happen. We're not talking about a backup. And the trade room is that, oh, he's going into the Vikings. So I was like, this is asinine. This is not
Yeah.
happening. Maybe he gets traded in the offseason, but he's not getting traded right now. It was absolutely ridiculous. And I think now we see McVay's comments after the game. I think all those guys are staying on. I think they are confident in the guys they have with the weak division that they can really make a run at this. And I'm kind of on board with them.
Yeah, and McVay is just always so interesting to listen to, like the photographic memory he has on plays. He just remembers everything. He's a fascinating individual, just a genius of a football mind.
Yeah. I think that there's been some criticism with him of some of the play calling this season. I think he's gotten away from the run in games that he shouldn't have, or there's been some questionable decisions. What was nice about last night is he really bared down on the run like he was supposed to in the moments he was supposed to. You have a budding superstar in Kyron Williams. Okay, people that are not watching Ram games like me every single week, you're checking on him in fantasy, but you're not watching the down and dirty work that this guy's doing in pass blocking that he does in the receiving game. This guy is a budding superstar right now. And we know what McVay's offense was like when he had Todd Gurley. You get a situation like that here. Now you have Stafford, who I think is still an upgrade over Goff. I think Goff is just in a better situation there in Detroit, and I'm happy for him. But Stafford, I think, pound for pound, is a better quarterback. Kupp, Puka, Higbee coming back, DeMarcus Robinson, like Tutu Atwell. This is a dangerous offense. You get this defense humming a little bit. They're young. They're hungry. I don't know, Brian. My season feels like I was in the doldrums. I felt the worst you possibly could be. Last night, they stay healthy. Who knows what could happen?
You got back-to-back wins now, and definitely things are trending in the right direction.
Yeah, and on the other side of it, before we move on to our picks, we touched on it, so we don't have to touch on it too much. But you look at it for the Vikings, another game, the loss to the Lions, now the loss to the Rams. Do you feel even more confident that, hey, could this team miss the playoffs? Because I'm starting to think it's a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, I think they will find their way to the playoffs. I know the signs haven't been great here lately, but I still trust in what they've done, both sides of the ball. Brian Flores with the defense, though, they don't have a lot of name brand players. They played pretty well, last night, notwithstanding. And on offense, we know, what they can do. I mean, Justin Jefferson he was
He's incredible.
feasting in that game in the first quarter, and he had what, 4 or 5 catches on the opening drive. He had that incredible catch where he like juggled
Awesome.
it. At first, it looked like it was going to be a one-handed catch, and then he comes down with it before he goes out of bounds. I mean, he is by far the best receiver in the game right now. So I just think they have the weaponry to still get it done. I have enough faith that Darnold will play well enough. So I'm still yes on the Vikings to make the
The
playoffs.
only thing, Brian, I will say, the news came out today. Left tackle, really good left tackle,
A
Christian
big blow,
Darrisaw,
very big
out for
blow.
the season,
Yeah.
has damage to his ACL and his MCL, and it sucked too. Not only you don't want to see injuries like that, but it was basically them running out the clock there in the first half. He just gets rolled up on, he gets hit into by a Rams defensive back, and his knee caves in. It was a complete accident. It just happened. That's what sucks to see. That is why, they brought him, what was it, Quinsonberry or whatever. He was getting annihilated by Jared Verse and Byron Young. That continues and they don't get help there. I do wonder of Darnold's ability. Left tackle, a premium important position in the NFL, as we all know. And then you look at it, I do need, Bry. We know what Justin Jefferson is. He's the best receiver in football. I need more out of Jordan Addison. This is a former first round pick. I don't know if it's a chemistry thing. He's just not getting open. I don't know what it is. He's had a bad season. Let's just be real. He needs to do more if this offense is going to the next level. And it shows you contain Aaron Jones. This offense is locked down. They score 6 points in the second half. I do see some warning signs here, Bry. I am believing in them still, but there are some warning signs here for this team slipping and the season slipping away.
Well, yeah, I mean, when not having your left tackle, that affects the whole process with the offense. I mean, Darnold has less time to throw. The
Yeah.
running game doesn't run as smoothly, and Aaron Jones has had an outstanding year. I thought that was a really good pickup in division. They saw how many games he played well against them as a Packer,
Yeah.
and he's really been a nice addition. But suddenly you lose your best offensive lineman, the running game takes a hit. Yeah, there's definitely reasons to question how good they are.
God, I mean, there's just moments as a final point that you can just shake your head at Matt Stafford and be like, "What are you doing?" But man, there are moments like last night. There was one play where I think it was like they were back behind the sticks. It was like 2nd and 15 or something after a penalty. And he steps up and throws this strike in the second half to Puka Nacua for a first down. It was like 25-yard play. And the zip that he got on the ball, I'm like, man, he still got it. Like, he's still, when you give this guy time, they're starting 2 rookies last night at left guard and center. You give this guy time, he's got it. And it shows to another underrated player that he's not a premium player, but he's solid. Alaric Jackson at left tackle. When this guy plays and when this guy doesn't play, the Rams are a completely different offense. A completely different offense. Like, that is a guy that they gotta make sure he stays healthy because he's been very, very injury prone. What a game. Saved the season. Last 2 weeks have saved the season. Saved them as being, I think, sellers at the deadline. And they're right in the mix next week for the division. Crazy. Crazy stuff, right? Really is. Let's get to our picks here for week 8, Bri. No London game this week. Have nothing going on. So we start off classic 1 o'clock. Ravens, Browns. Deshaun Watson last week tears his Achilles in what has been, I think, inarguably the worst trade in NFL history. Looks like Jameis Winston is trending to start, which I actually think makes the Browns scarier and a little more dangerous. But this Ravens team, they're gonna romp them. They're going to romp them. I feel like this Ravens team is just far and away better. I get it's the AFC North division, rough and tough. All these teams, all these games are close. This one ain't going to be. Give me the Ravens.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way you could take the Browns here. I mean, look, you don't want to see any get hurt, but
No.
like with Watson, clearly the team wanted to bench him. It was almost like
They
the
did.
football gods kind of interceded and said, this guy's, he needs to take a seat here. And it's unfortunate the way that it unfolded, but I mean, I think the Browns clearly have a better chance with Winston in there. But you're playing one of the best teams in the league, a team that is humming right now on offense. Lamar playing at an MVP level. Derrick Henry running the heck out of the ball. I mean, this offense just cannot be stopped right now. You got Zay Flowers has started to get going. Mark Andrews, after a sleepy start, he's gotten in the end zone a few times. This team is Super Bowl material this year. I have them winning this game easily.
I do caution hesitation just because, like, it always feels like as soon as they play the Chiefs in the playoffs, it's over. But so it seems like they have to accomplish that and get over the hump. But this is what they do in the regular season, right? Especially in the month of October. They look dominant. They look great. And I think, in my opinion, Jackson and Henry are both top 3 MVP candidates right now. They've been that good. The defense, though, continues to be scary, Bri. Like, yeah, he throws 5 touchdowns. He does, for the second time in his career, more touchdowns than incompletion in a game last week against the Bucs. But that defense is still not great. They really got to figure some stuff out there and maybe make some moves at the trade deadline. The Titans play the Lions, and, I know the Titans are fun sometimes because of Will Levis. But, they've been starting Rudolph. The Lions are just clearly the better team, right? I mean, we sung their praises here so far on this podcast. I don't think this is another game that's going to be close. I understand it's NFL football. Crazy things happen, but the Lions will win this game by 2 touchdowns. Give me them.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of big spreads this week. And we know that this season, especially the first 5 weeks or so, it was dominated by underdogs covering numbers and winning outright a lot of games. But some of these matchups, like I can't see how Tennessee keeps this game close. I mean, Detroit, another team like the Ravens, they really have the motor going right now in the Motor City, nonetheless. So yeah, I've got the Lions.
Colts at the Texans. This is weird, right? Because the Colts, I feel like, have been bad, but somehow they're 4-3 playing for the division. And then the Texans also, they're 5-2, but that loss last week to the Packers. Stroud throws for under 100 yards. I mean, we've been saying it on this podcast, right? There's just something not right with the Houston Texans. They've had their injuries, sure, but there's just something there not clicking. Is this that sophomore slump for Stroud? I think it has been, clearly. He's been a guy, he's an MVP candidate going into the season. He's been nowhere close to that this season. Nothing of what he was in his rookie season. But right now, Anthony Richardson is fun. They had a fun game to start this season, right? But, I mean, this guy's under 50% completions almost every single week. he's barely getting to 10 completions in a game. I just can't trust a guy that is doing that regardless of what the Texans struggles have been. They're going to have Joe Mixon here. You've seen since he's come back how great he has been. It'll be close, closer than it should be, but give me the Texans to win this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was week one. These teams played a close game. The Texans won, I think it was like 29-27.
Yeah.
So you probably figure it'll be close again. The Colts get Jonathan Taylor back after missing, what, at least the last two games, might have been three.
Yeah.
So that obviously helps the offense, but Anthony Richardson, you said it, he's just been too erratic. I mean, I almost wonder right now if Joe Flacco is the better option
Yeah.
quarterback. And so yeah, I have Houston winning. We know they haven't been great. Missing Nico Collins is a big deal. It really had to get Tank Dell going. That's
Yeah.
the guy in this
For
offense.
sure.
We know what Diggs can do, Mixon running the ball, but they need that other receiver, and they have it in Dell. He's talented. We know what he can do, but for whatever reason, he's kind of disappeared in the offense this year. I think the Texans at home here will be able to get it done.
Yeah, Dell has taken the most hit since Diggs has been in there, and this offense is just completely different when either Mixon or Collins are not in there. Like you see it, but I mean, look at the stats, right? Anthony Richardson this season, yes, he missed, basically what amounts to like 2 games ish or so. 3 touchdowns to 6 picks, 48.5 completion percentage. I mean, that's not getting it done in college, never mind the NFL. This keeps up. Doesn't matter he was the fourth overall pick. He's going to get benched. Like, it's not good enough at all. And I hate to see it from a former Florida Gator, but facts are facts, Brian. It's just been unsustainable. And I think Shane Steichen is a great coach. Even he can't get it done if he's doing that, Anthony Richardson. The Packers go to the Jags, Brian. What a game that maybe before the season started, we'd be like, oh, 2 young quarterbacks. Trevor Lawrence, Jordan Love. Well, those seasons are going in quite opposite directions. Are the Jags picking up a little bit of steam here? 2 straight wins? Probably not. I don't believe in them. You know I was a huge buyer in them. You know how I feel about them. But this Packers team, I know Jordan Love could sometimes just drive you crazy. He's been compared to a little bit of Brett Favre with that gunslinger mentality. But the Packers are just a better team. Top to bottom, they're a better team. We all know it. And I think the Jags, their little momentum is going to come to an end this week. Give me the Packers.
Yeah, I have the Packers as well. If you want to look at like a model for how to build an offense like around young, solid
They're it.
players, the Packers, they're the model. I mean, they have done a beautiful job. This receiving group, the tight ends, they're all young, homegrown drafted players that are playing key roles. That the tight end Tucker Kraft has emerged in this
Mm-hmm.
offense. And Love, he hasn't played great. Like he's had some good games, he's had some not great games. Decision making hasn't been great. So I feel a little bit vindicated, in my take before the season of him not, being worthy of that gargantuan contract
Yeah.
that he got.
Yeah.
But
Looking pretty good.
they have a good system in place there that I think it's going to be a sustainable team for years to come, and I think Love will be good enough to get this team to the playoffs. If not this year, then consistently in the years ahead. I do think though he has to step up his game, but this team has a lot of talent. There's a lot to like about this Packer team.
And shout out to Jeff Hafley, the new defensive coordinator over there. A lot of questions coming over from Boston College. His defense has played pretty great. Better than
No.
most Packer defenses have played in the recent number of years, especially in the LaFleur era. They deserve a ton of credit. And man, I am really sinking with that Jags ship this season, man. The Cardinals and the Dolphins in a game that's weird because Tua is going to be back, but because of personal reasons, he's not wearing the Guardian cap, which I think is just a horrific decision. I have no idea what personal reason that could be. He's coming back. Usually quarterbacks and players in general coming off of concussions. You could look at the statistics, do not play well at all. And then the Cardinals are like this maddening team, right? Where like, yeah, they're not good, but they're okay. But like, why are they not better with Kyler Murray than they should be? It's just a really weird situation there. That being said, because of their inconsistency, I am taking the Miami Dolphins. They've been arguably the worst team in football the last month. They need to prove something. They need to save their season. And Tua could just be middling. And I think he could still be better than the quarterbacks that they've had in the last month. And the Cardinals, you just can't trust them. You really can't. Give me the Dolphins.
Yeah, you make a good case there, but I'm gonna go the other way and take Arizona on the road. I just feel like I trust this team a little bit more right now. You know, a lot of questions just how effective Tua will be after the long layoff and the the concussion history that he's had in his career. I mean,
That's
look,
fair.
it'll definitely be better than what they put out there with Tim Boyle and whatever else cast of characters has been out there. It has not
Huntley,
been
too.
pretty. Skylar Thompson. I mean, it's really a who's who. So I'm going to take Arizona to win a close game here. I mean, the Dolphins will look improved on offense, but I think Kyler will make some plays against this Miami defense, and it'll be enough to get the road win.
The Jets go up to New England and visit the Patriots. And the last time, Bry, that the Jets got a win and look like a competent football team, it's when they blew out the Patriots on Thursday Night Football. Since then, they fired their coach, changed offensive coordinators, and have lost 4 straight games. They also, by the way, they've also brought Reddick back in the building and traded for Devontae Adams. So if there hasn't been enough going on in the circus here in New York, which is really New Jersey, they're now going into a game to save their season against a team that should be worse than them, but are they? Because they're only 1 game back from them. Gerard Mayo in the bad loss last week overseas against the Jags, called his team soft. Do they respond?
Yep.
We'll have to see. And quietly in the last 2 weeks, even though they've been losses, Drake May has played pretty damn well. So that is also
Yeah.
coming down the horizon. Bry, the floor is yours, my friend, as the resident Jets fan. What's going on? Who's winning this game, man?
Oh boy. I mean, yeah, like you said the word there, circus is really the word. I mean, like all the things that you just say in such a short period, it's just amazes me how much goes on with this team. And yeah, I mean, you make the coaching change, which we both were kind of on board with. And then, after these last couple of losses, I see a lot of outsiders that are like, oh, well, maybe it wasn't such a good move to fire Saleh. And my retort would be, I don't think they're winning those games with Saleh coaching either. So I just think the team is a mess anyway. They were going in the wrong direction. They tried to spice things up, thinking they'd get a spark. Clearly, they haven't gotten a spark because Rodgers is talking after the last game about how the team is flat and the energy isn't there at
They need
halftime
to
after
be
they
more
started off pretty
joyful.
good. Right. They start off they look pretty good in that game in Pittsburgh, right? They're moving the ball,
Yeah.
getting Devontae Adams involved. Rodgers throws a couple of touchdowns, and it all just falls apart after one bad interception where he throws into triple coverage in the middle of the field. And then, you get a blocked field goal. The kicker, Zerline, can't make a field goal lately.
No.
And then it felt like the air just completely went out of the sails and the team had nothing left in the second half. Defense was just getting gashed by the Steelers in the ground game. Pickens is beating them left and right. It was just another disaster. With this game, I have to believe the Jets are going to win. I mean, if they lose this game, how bad is this season going to be? I think when it's all said and done, the record's not going to be pretty. You're facing one of the worst teams here. I mean, I'm surprised they're a 7-point favorite just because they played so poorly.
Yeah.
We know New England is not good at all. But even though, like you said, May has played decently since he's come into the starting lineup. I mean, I'm just so disillusioned by this team that like I don't feel good about any week. But their best game of the season was against the Patriots. They kind of looked like world beaters in that game. You had people saying this looks like a Super Bowl team. And really, what we learned is they just beat up on a hapless team. Feel like they're going to get a win. I don't think they're going to blow them out. I mean, I feel like it's going to be kind of a pull it out kind of game. But yeah, I mean that's kind of where I'm at. It's
Sorry,
really
man.
just a saga with this team year after year, as we know.
Yeah, I feel bad for you. I feel bad for Dylan and everybody else out there that are Jet fans. I do. I'll have my fun, but like I root for you when we go to games, as long as they're not playing the Rams. Like I do hope that you guys can have some end to the suffering, but it just It just seems like you can't. I mean, you're up 15-3 in that game against the Steelers. You get outscored 34 to nothing the rest of the game. I mean, it's horrific. I mean, that's bad coaching, that's bad players, that's everything. And what are you going to do if you lose this game? Fire the interim head coach? Like there's no other move to play. And I'm telling you right now, I'm picking the
Oh.
Jets in this game, and I've been burned the last 2 weeks. I picked you guys against the Bills, got burned in there. Picked you guys against the Steelers, got burned in there. They burn me again, I might not pick the Jets the entire rest of the season. I'm just letting you know right now. And
See, I picked against them the last
yeah,
two
and I
games.
should have.
I
I
really
should have, and I thought, oh, they would be better than they were. The Bills game was right there for the taking. You're leading by double digits against the Steelers. I mean, it's just bad all around. They lose this game, Bry. We're gonna be ripping into them next week because this is going to get even uglier, if you can imagine that. If they drop and lose to one of the worst teams of football in the Patriots, who they dominated 4 weeks ago, and they're 2-6, not only their season's over, I mean, but this is one of the worst situations we maybe ever seen in the last decade. Like this will be something that Jet fans will talk about for years to come, and it's going to set your franchise back even more than it already has for years to come. I'm picking them. They should win this game. I do think it's going to be close now with the quarterback situation that has changed there in New England, but man, oh man, I would be nervous if I was a Jets fan.
It just goes to show, like at the start of the season, you looked at the roster, and it all looked good on paper, right? Like you had
Mm-hmm.
talented pieces, Brees Hall, Garrett Wilson, everybody's all excited about the prospects of the defense being like this historically great defense.
Yeah.
It just the pieces don't all fit together. Like you can have a good team on paper, but this team just has not executed. Rodgers' play has not been good enough. There's just too many distractions. You know, the bringing in Adams, it's like you're bringing in Rodgers' buddy. You're basically just coddling him, which is just what this season feels like it's about more than anything else. Like it helps to a degree, but not enough, in my opinion. And yeah, I mean that's just what it is. The circus goes on.
Yeah, he's been a below average quarterback, and I think this season proves what we kind of already always knew. He's not a leader. He's not a leader. He's never been one. And Devontae Adams is giving speeches in the locker room after the loss, and he's not. So Rodgers, oh, it's the greatest speech I've heard in 20 years. Shut up. I'm sorry, shut up, dude. Like no one cares. Play better, or we got to be more joyful. We're playing with too much rage. I mean, you're just saying things. He's calling out the media after the game. Oh, don't listen to you guys. Shut up and play actual winning football. That's what Jet fans and the rest of the football want to hear. Otherwise, just go away, retire in the middle of the season, and no one cares. Like I'm over it. I'm over Aaron Rodgers. I'm done. I'm done. The Falcons will visit the Bucks in a game where, man, I feel bad, so bad for the Bucks. Right, a game that they're
Yeah.
winning last week against the Ravens. Looks like, ooh, this kid, they might be able to upset the Ravens here. This Bucks team is dangerous. You lose Mike Evans on what should have been a touchdown catch. He pulls his hamstring. He's going to be out to at least, I think, week 11. And then Chris Godwin, the dislocated ankle, really where the game was completely decided, and he's out for the season. And I do want to push back just for a second. I've seen some people be out there like, he got roasted, Bowles, by the media of like, why were your starters out there, blah, 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 blah. I kind of agree with that. I've seen some people push back and be like, oh, the game is still well within reach. It's 10. Let's be real. Okay, it's a 10-point game with under 2 minutes to go. I don't care what the analytic nerds say. The game's over. The game is over. You're not winning the game. All those starters should have been out. It looks like it might have been on a hip drop tackle that's being investigated. But stuff like that, I think he deserved the criticism. And people kind of defending him afterwards, I'm like, I think you're just trying to defend Todd Bowles, the man. I think as the coach, that was a poor decision. So I don't see why that was done there. But regardless, I'm picking the Falcons. I think the Bucks are too hurt at this point. The Falcons did not play that great last week in a win, particularly Kirk Cousins. We know what Cousins did against this team a few weeks ago, throwing through 500 yards. I think the Falcons are going to win this one.
Yeah, I have Atlanta as well. I mean, if the Bucks had their full complement of weapons, I probably would take
Yeah,
Tampa, with how well Baker has played this year, but it's kind of like the Rams situation, right? Like when you lose your top two
change
receivers,
your whole
you're
team up.
clearly are not the same offense. We saw like the Eagles played a game without both A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith. That makes a world of
Yeah.
difference if you don't have your two leading playmakers out there. And it's really just a shame to lose two players of that caliber. I mean,
Yeah.
Mike Evans was in the game last week that clearly the hamstring was bothering him going
Mm-hmm.
in, but he toughed it out. He was out there and then trying to make the touchdown catch. He goes down. Clearly, you knew it was going to be a long-term
Yep.
absence. He was hurting in a bad way. And Godwin goes down. I mean, another guy who's just having a great
Great
season.
season.
And you heard about all like the community work and how good of a person
Yeah, he's a
he
good
is.
guy.
It's just tough to see. Yeah. So yeah, it's going to be tough. I mean, you got Cade Otton at tight end. You got limited receivers. There's not really a
Yeah,
whole lot to
Sterling
work
Shepard.
with there. Sterling Shepard, the former Giant, Bucky Irving running the football with Rashad White if he's healthy. But in the end, Atlanta is the healthier team. Drake London is really kind of had a breakout season, kind of quietly. He's really turned into a number one receiver this year. So I think Atlanta will beat a overmatched Buck team that's just too beat up.
The final 1 o'clock game is the Eagles and the Bengals. And honestly, this is a really interesting game, right? Because I don't feel like the Eagles are 4-2, but I don't really feel like they're that good, and they should be a lot better. And then the Bengals, I mean, I've been pretty hard on the Bengals on this podcast. They're 3-4. They're really all their wins are against terrible teams, and they've not played well in them. The Panthers game, I don't think they played that great. I don't think they played that well last week against the Browns. Like, there's something I've said as well, like with the Texans, that is just not clicking with this team. Their defense has been terrible. Now it's been better, and the offense hasn't been as good. They just cannot get it together over there, and they're playing desperate. I mean, they lose this game and they're 3-5. The season is probably over, right? Like at some point, somebody has to stick a fork in this team. We can't say, they're losing, but they're dangerous. Like, you need to win football games against good teams to make the playoffs. Like that has to happen here. And I just question what side of the ball is going to show up. If not, are both sides going to show up to have a complete win? I'm not sure about that. Brian, I'll swing it over to you. Who you got in this game?
Taking Philly. I think they really have kind of bounced back here lately at a resounding win. We know the Giants are what they are, but it was kind of a complete effort with the Eagles. The defense holding the Giants to only 3 points. We know the offense, it hasn't completely clicked this year. Jalen Hurts has not been great, but they're healthier now. They had that period where Brown and Smith were both out. They're back now. Dallas Goedert missed the last game, but if they have all their weapons with Saquon Barkley, this is an offense that's going to put up points. I mean,
Yeah.
Barkley has just been remarkable, which we figured, the improvement running behind a much better offensive line. Clearly, that has held up. It's a matter of just the cohesion of this team.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if that aspect clicks, they're dangerous in the NFC. But there's too many times where it seems like they're not on the same page. Where Nick Sirianni is picking fights with the fans, and different things like that are going on. I don't completely trust this Cincinnati team. I think the Eagles are going to keep it going. I like fully on the road.
Despite what I've said, I'm taking the Bengals in this game. I think this is the season. I mean, this is it right here. You need to win against a good team, and Joe Burrow and that offense, who have been quiet the last few weeks, have to get back to what they were doing in the beginning of the season. They have to show up. Like, this is do or die right now. And this Eagles team, I just don't fully trust. They have all these amazing weapons, but Hurts, yeah, he had his best game of the year by far, really, in the last, you could argue year and a half last week. But you're playing the Giants. I don't know. I just feel like this team goes as Barkley goes, but are they as good as they should be? I don't know if they're that well coached. I'm trusting the better quarterback in this game in Joe Burrow and probably the better coach in Zach Taylor, even though I have questions about him as well, but definitely over Nick Sirianni. It's going to be an interesting game. I won't be shocked if I'm wrong on this one, but this is the one I think I'm most intrigued in the 1 o'clock window. The 4:05 games, Brian, kick off with the Saints and the Chargers. And the Chargers are kind of what we've always thought, right? Like, I do think they'll turn the corner with Harbaugh, but they've had so many injuries yet again. Offensive talent at some point needs to change. You can't have Will Disley being your main guy to be catching balls like it was last week. It's just not going to get it done. And poor Justin Herbert, over 300 yards. He's doing all he can, and they're still scoring like 14 points, and they can't win a game. And then the Saints, this is what we cautioned, right? Like, oh, they got off to this hot start. They're 2-0. And, we kind of said here, we're like, all right, maybe they're on notice, but are they? Like, Derek Carr is still Derek Carr. Now he's been missing games, and it's been Spencer Rattler. We know what the Saints are. We picked them of where they were in third place in this division to start the season. I'm picking the Chargers. I think they're more of a physical team. I think it's going to be a really probably game where both teams don't score more than 17 points. But I think being a better coach team, I think the Chargers will grind out a win here. And I believe in what Harbaugh is. I'm taking them.
Yeah, I think this is a game where the Chargers really need to kind of flex their muscle here and win double digits. If they're a serious playoff contender, I need to see a big effort from them. Coming off a game where I thought they would win. We know it's a road game, but they had the lead most of the way and let it slip away against Arizona. I mean, the weapons aren't great on this team. You got like Lad McConkey, the rookie. I mean, Will Disley, J.K. Dobbins has had a nice bounce back after an injury-riddled first few years of his career. But I have to believe the Chargers are going to win this game. I mean, the Saints with Spencer Rattler have not been very competitive. It's been a lot of blowouts. So I think the Chargers at home will get it done.
Right. Quick bonus question. Is Dennis Allen on the hot seat or gets fired if they lose 6 in a row?
I don't think they're gonna fire him at this juncture of the season, but I do think he's on the hot seat as far as like his future beyond this year. I definitely think there's a good chance they move on after this season.
I think his seat, if they lose this game, maybe he doesn't get fired. His seat is on fire, and I think he has a great chance of getting fired in the middle of the season. I really do believe that. The other 4 or 5 game is the Bills and the Seahawks, which is going to be another fun, intriguing game here. Seahawks have played solid. I've argued they are not as great as their record has said, but Geno's played okay this season. I think he's played pretty good this season, and I think, stat padded a little bit, but that's just my opinion. I think there are weapons on this team in the Seahawks that make them dangerous, and on the other side for the Bills, like, what they were lacking, maybe it starts changing, right? We've seen a little bit of that last week. They trade for Amari Cooper. That's exactly the kind of player that they needed on this offense. Him, Coleman, Shakir, Cook. All of a sudden, Bri, they're a little bit dangerous here. I'm taking the Buffalo Bills in a game that I wouldn't be shocked if the Seahawks won. I think it's going to be a really good game, but I believe Cooper makes that big of a difference. And I think this Bills team with the better quarterback will make the plays down the stretch. Give me Buffalo.
We saw Cooper's first game with the new team, immediate impact. He wasn't on the field that much, but they had a package of plays for him. He scored a touchdown as they wiped away Tennessee in a blowout game that they actually were trailing in the early part, but then they turned that around quickly. Yeah. I'm actually going to go with the home team here. I'm going to take Seattle. I feel like with the Bills, there's a lot of variance. You could get the really good Bills or as good as anybody, but the really good Bills don't come at you week after week. They have these hiccups. Seems like they're prone to them. I think here going across the country in that hostile environment with the 12th man. We know Seattle's going to be without DK Metcalf. That's a big deal. We know how big of a weapon he is. But you got other guys there. Smith and Jigba can pick up some of the slack. Tyler Lockett, as a veteran, he knows what he's doing. And Kenneth Walker, I mean, when he's been healthy, he's been a beast this year.
Yeah.
So I think this Seattle team, has some mustard, especially at home. I think they're going to get a maybe somewhat surprising win.
The 425 games kick off with the Chicago Bears going to the Commanders, going to Washington. And this is a game where, Jaden Daniels, he suffers that kind of oblique injury last week. It's one of the things people were worried about. Really the only thing people were worried about with him. He's a little frail. He's slighter of frames, more slender. He's prone to injuries. He might play in this game. It might be Mariota, but even if Daniels plays, he is not going to be 100%. And you're coming off a Bears team that's rested, who has kind of found their stride. That defense is very good. Caleb Williams has looked good in the last 3 weeks. I'm taking the Bears in this one. I think this is going to be a fun game, a matchup that we're going to see a lot between these two quarterbacks going for the next 5 or 10 years. I at least hope that. But in this one, I think just the healthier team with more momentum is going to be the Bears. Give me them.
I mean, my pick here honestly is contingent on whether Daniels plays,
You
which
got to
at
pick it
this
right now,
point
though.
we don't know. If you're telling me he suits up, I'm taking Washington. It seems like right now there's probably a better chance he misses the game. You know, you're going to Marcus Mariota, which you don't feel good about their passing game with Mariota under center. So I guess I have to go on the assumption that no Jaden Daniels, and in that case, I would take the
Taking
Bears.
the
You know,
Bears.
I wasn't too high on this team coming in. They played decently. You know, Caleb Williams, after a slow start, has had some big games. DeAndre Swift has been lights out of the backfield. So you know, they feel like they're building something there. Washington healthy, I would take him, but I can't trust that Daniels is going to be out there and you know the rookie sensation season that he's had. So you got to go with the other rookie. Would have been fun to see
It would have been so
both
fun.
square up, the number one against the number two, but I guess I'm gonna have to go with the Bears.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of fun in years to come as well. The Panthers and the Broncos play in a game that, two teams trending in very different directions. Broncos, rough start, have been really playing solid over the last month, even in games that they have lost. And then you have the Panthers that are just, they're like the worst or second worst team in football. We just know what they are. Going back to Bryce Young in this game, which we all knew was going to happen. I have no faith in that either. Give me the Broncos, Sean Payton. They're a better team. Let's just be honest.
Yeah, well, I think we should send our best to Andy Dalton, who was involved in a car accident.
Yep.
And luckily, you know, I don't
Thankfully,
think was
okay.
hurt too badly, but you know, it's going to keep him out of action. So you hope for the best for him. I mean, Bryce Young has not shown much as an NFL quarterback. I mean, I guess you could make the case that time off maybe helped him. I don't, but he's not exactly going to have players out there. They don't have Thielen. They're not going to have Deontay Johnson. So who exactly is he going to be throwing to?
Yep.
I mean, there's really just not a lot there. And Bo Nix is kind of on the up and up along with this Bronco team. Had a very impressive game against the Saints on that Thursday night, 2 Thursdays ago. I'm going Denver at home for sure.
The other 425 game is Chiefs Raiders. Maybe a revenge match for the Chiefs after they suffered their last defeat, believe it or not, and one of their worst defeats in the Mahomes era against the Raiders on Christmas last year. The Chiefs, since that game, have literally not lost, which is insane to think about. They go in there. The Raiders are so dysfunctional. We know what they are. Aiden O'Connell or Minshew or whoever's QBing in there. The only two good players to watch on that team are Max Crosby and rookie sensation Brock Bowers. Other than that, nobody cares about the Raiders. Let's be real. I think the Chiefs, even under man, we've seen what they can do. They're going to get their revenge. They're beating the Raiders.
Yeah, I would agree too. I know, I guess you could make the case it's a divisional game. The Raiders have played them tough certain games in the Mahomes era, but I just don't see with Gardner Minshew and a limited offense that they have that they're able to keep this game interesting. I mean, what happened? Zamir White was like supposed to be the
Yeah,
lead running
I
back
know.
here. He's disappeared. You got Alexander Madison has been like the main
He's been
guy, but
solid.
you know, yeah, but he's a journeyman kind of running back. Yeah, the Chiefs, Hopkins, I think will give that offense a boost. Mahomes, I have to expect is going to play better at some point, and even when he hasn't played well, as we documented, they're still winning. I think they keep it up, keep the winning times going.
Yeah, and I think the Chiefs are going to lose at some point this season. It's just not going to be here, especially because it's not going to be that letdown game of last year. They remember that against the Raiders. Raiders done a lot of talking. Pierce said after that game last season, "Oh, we have the recipe to beat the Chiefs." They remember all that stuff. Remember that rookie or whatever for the Raiders on defense had the Kermit the Frog puppet dressed in the Mahomes outfit in training camp. They're taking notes on that stuff. So I don't think this game's going to be close at all. The night game, the Sunday night game, is the Cowboys and the Niners in a game that normally, oh my God, I mean, what a game this would be. And these two teams have not been good at all. They've been injured and they've also not played well. A game where two teams are absolutely desperate. 3-3 Cowboys, 3-4 Niners. Bry, who you got in this one?
Yeah, I got the Niners. I think they're going to win this one comfortably. It's probably more about my lack of faith in the Cowboys than it is faith in the
It's fair.
49ers, but Dallas right now, you talk about a team with issues. I mean, on the heels of they come out their bye week. The week before was that disaster at home against Detroit. They've gotten killed all three games at home. I guess you could say the best thing about this game is that they're on the road.
Yeah.
But I mean, right now you got Jerry Jones is chirping with
He's
the
crazy
local
right now.
media there, threatening to get people fired, which is just ridiculous. I mean, he's calling out Mike McCarthy, saying the offensive structure isn't great right now. You got Troy Aikman saying that he's observing the wide receivers aren't running hard on the routes.
Hmm.
What is this team doing well right now? Nothing.
Yeah.
They are just a mess of a team. The defense is giving up big plays all over the place. We know they're decimated by injuries. But I just don't see against a team that they've had very little success against in the position that they're in. And I know the Niners haven't been great, but I think Purdy, you're going to get a better effort out of. We'll see if Debo is able to suit up, but I think you get the best version of the Niners and Cowboys. I just think this is headed to continue down a very tumultuous path, a very uncertain future. And, I had a lot of reservations about this team coming into the season.
Yep.
The future with Dak Prescott was much talked about, and they decide to give him the bag, as the kids like to say, right before week one. And, it just felt like there wasn't a conviction there, and there hasn't been a conviction in anything that they do. So, yeah, with all that said, my pick is the 49ers.
Yeah, I'm picking the 49ers as well. I think maybe they had a chance if the 49ers were riding high. They could be a little lazy. They're banged up. Cowboys come in there. 49ers are absolutely desperate, especially after the Rams have now won 2 in a row. They can't drop to 3-5 in this division. It's just they can't let that happen. And the Cowboys, they're banged up. They're a mess. Jerry Jones is clearly the problem, and he's never going to realize that. And then also, you just have the weird things like Brandon Aubrey, their star kicker, probably the best kicker in football right now. He's on jury duty this week. Like, what is happening? Like, what is going on right now? I think this game is going to be ugly, but I think the Niners are going to come out on top, and Cowboy fans and Cowboy Nation are going to cry after this game. So I think it's going to be a fun one. The final game, Bri, is the Monday night game, Giants Steelers. Steelers somehow, I still don't think are that great, and they're 5-2. Russell Wilson, best game he's probably played since his Seattle days. Really, the second to last season that he was in Seattle last week against the Jets. And then the Giants are the Giants, right? Like, I think Brian Daboll is a good coach, but we know what Daniel Jones is, man. This is what I've been trying to tell people for years now, and Giants fans are finally listening to me. He's not good. We all know it. He got benched last week. He's probably going to get benched again in this game when TJ Watt and those boys are just decimating that Giants offensive line. It's Steelers all the way. They're winning this one.
Yeah, I've got Pittsburgh as well. I mean, a couple interesting things like the decision to go to Russell Wilson when the team was winning games. Justin Fields wasn't playing great,
Mm-hmm.
but he was playing, winning enough football. That was, seen as
It
kind
was
of a
bold.
controversial move. Like, right, like what is Mike Tomlin doing here? And then Wilson comes out, and early in that game, he was awful
Terrible.
against the Jets. I mean, he started like two for his first eight. He was, missing receivers wildly, but he really did put it together and had a very good second half. Got it going there, the connection with Pickens. So maybe after all, Mike Tomlin knows what he's doing and knows that he can get a little extra boost out of Wilson quarterbacking. I mean, my pick is Pittsburgh here. The Giants, Andrew Thomas missing on the
It's
offensive
killing
line
them.
just seems to make a huge difference. I mean, like he's there anchoring it. Like early on, they weren't playing great, but we're seeing like some signs of progress. We were saying
Yeah.
here on the show, even with Jones not playing great, the running game was decent. They were protecting Jones better, but without Thomas, this line just doesn't function, and it just affects the whole operation. They can't run the ball, and you get Jones making mistakes. So in this environment in Pittsburgh with T.J. Watt coming at you with a depleted offensive line, it's just not a good recipe for the Giants. I'm taking the Steelers all the way.
Everybody resharing that owner John Mara clip from the Hard Knocks that they did this offseason with the Giants of like, yeah, if we lose Barkley, I don't know if I'll be able to sleep at night. and to go to the Eagles and then him to predictably do what he did last week to them, that ripped the soul out of Giants fans, especially in MetLife. Yeah, it's gonna be another long season for New York Giants fans and apparently New York Jet fans as well. But somehow they still have more hope somehow. So tell me how that works. But guys, that has been First and 10 this week here for Week 8. We talked, Week 7 a little bit. Week 6, of course, we touched on just in general passing. We're sorry we missed last week, but Brian is feeling better. Glad he is back for this show. We've missed you guys. Please subscribe to this channel, share with your friends if you be so kind. Comment down below. We love talking NFL football with you. It helps the algorithm for these videos to give more content to you, to upgrade the streams as well, hopefully in the future. And we just love doing this stuff and getting back and talking about NFL football. You'll see this on Saturday morning when you're watching this right before the games. And we'll be back next week, as we've been pretty much doing every single week, to talk more of our favorite games and moments from this past week. Bri, any closing thoughts here for this week?
Well, we have off and on the last couple of weeks kind of interspersed a little bit of baseball in the mix because of the great run that our favorite
Yeah.
team, the Mets, went on. Unfortunately, the run came to an end, but I think you share my same sentiments as the majority of Met fans do on just what a great ride it was, the joy that this team brought, the improbable moments. I mean, it
Awesome.
was just a blast. And for me, personally, getting to experience Game 4 of the
Yeah.
Division Series in person, it's just an unforgettable experience and one I'll never forget. So just hats off to them. Certainly looks like the future is bright for our team. And now we get to watch the World Series without the Mets, unfortunately. A dynamic matchup for sure, one that I'm sure will captivate the baseball watching world with the Yankees and Dodgers underway here in Game 1 as we speak, and Giancarlo Stanton just hit a go-ahead two-run homer, so the Yankees lead 2-1. That's your update.
There you go, Bri. Yeah, you'll be keeping us updated because I have no plans of really watching the World Series. Yeah, it was an amazing season for the Mets. Really proud. I'm really glad that I got to stream for the people on Super Deep Prod on the Twitch channel. The Brewers Mets game, to call that whole game, to call that Pete Alonso home run. That's a moment I'll never forget. And of course, you obviously going into the game, seeing the Lindor grand slam. Unforgettable moments. I love this team. I hope we get some semblance of this energy back next season and we can get right back into the postseason. But yeah, shout out to that team and shout out to a pretty good postseason run for baseball overall. A lot of exciting games. Good for the product as well. So yeah, guys, that concludes here the NFL podcast here of First and 10. Great seeing you all. We'll talk to you next time. And yeah, until next week, thank you for watching.